So we have done with both the units, and your third unit is your principles of landscape. So we are going to read what are the principles used in the landscape, the visual components, and the other what construction details. This is going to be your third unit. The first part is principles of landscape. So I'll let you know what are the principles. You have focalization, proportion and scale, balance, order and unity, repetition, rhythm, sequence or transition, contrast and harmony. So for each thing I have given it with an example, and you can view the sketches and you will be able to understand what it is. So the first one is focalization. So focalization is created as a visual break in a sequence and the flow of a landscape. So for example, when you have a whole set of landscape and you have some breaking point, that is what is a sculpture or a landscape which actually gives you a visual break. That is what it is called as. And next is your proportion and scale. I think this you would have known what is proportion and what is scale. Proportion is the relationship that exists among the components of a landscape. So when you see the picture, you can understand what is in scale and out of scale. You have, and scale is the human perception of the size of the space and form, which is related to the human dimension. So scale is what we do, which is related to the human dimension. You have been learning it from years, what a scale is and how we have the proportionate drawings and what, that is what it is. And next is your symmetrical or formal balance. With the words itself, you can understand what it is. So symmetrical balance is, it is achieved when the mass, weight, or a number of objects on both the sides of the landscape design are exactly the same. So when you see the picture, I think you can understand. So whatever is balanced as the same, the shape or the trees or whatever it is, which is the same on both the sides and which is having an equal balance, is called as symmetrical or formal balance. And it also, balance also refers to the stability or the response of the garden, and it is realized by creating an equilibrium between the parts that make up the whole world. Your next is asymmetry or informal balance. Is just the opposite to your symmetrical balance. So in this, asymmetrical balance is the visual attraction which may be achieved by using the opposite compositions on either side of the central axis. In your symmetry, you would have seen both the sides are the same, including your landscape and your the design of the park or whatever. In this, when you see, it is totally different. The landscape is different, the object which is lying between is different, but still it is kind of we have taken the center one. If you see the both opposite composition on either side, so this form of balance often has a separate or different themes which is having an equal but different type of attraction. It will be kind of equal, but the type of attraction is going to be different. This is also one of the example. If you see the symmetrical and asymmetrical, you can find the difference. And next is your order and unity. Order is like a universal organization and structure of design. It is the basic scheme of a skeleton of a design. Order is created and carried out through the composition. For example, when you see the asymmetrical balance of form or which is naturally arrangement. So order can be like which has the same repeated one. Maybe if you're using, for example, some pebbles, some rock, and these kind of vegetation, you have the same order which is being repeated. And unity is which gives the landscape design a sense of oneness and interconnection. It is kind of both the same meaning. Unity is the same, which has been, again used. Only these objects have been used again and again for the landscape purpose or landscape design, whatever. Unity can be achieved by using the, height, size, texture, color schemes, and many other different elements. This is a part of the unity, which is repetition strengthens the unity. Repetition is the one which is again repeated. If you're using, like, for example, one tall tree with a huge coverage, and you have two shrubs and three herbs, and the same thing is being repeated, or the size of the plant, or it can be the color, or it can be the texture or form, anything which is being repeated, which gives a strength to the unity. That is what this is. Next is, it is always said that three elements of the same kind are grouped together which actually sense is very strong. So any three elements which are combined together and it has been used, it is the sense of strong. Next is your repetition. In this unit with the principles, when you know it with your words itself, you can understand what it is. Next is called the repetition, which is the continuing thread in a garden that is generally defined as duplication. When a design element is repeated, the mind is better to able to understand the composition as a whole, so the sense of an order is introduced. Repetition involves the repetition or using an element more than once throughout your design. So repetition provides a common feature throughout the design that pulls the design together. So when you see the image, you could understand how the tiles or how the vegetation or landscape, how it has been repeated, the stones which is being placed. So repetition is the one which is given in your sketches, you can see it. And what is called as rhythm. Rhythm is which creates a feeling of motion. It can be of repeating your color scheme, texture, shape, line, or forms, whatever it is which we play in our landscape design. So next is your sequence or transition. So what do you mean by sequence? Sequence is which creates a visual movement in landscape design. So it is different from the others. So sequence in a landscape design is achieved by the gradual progression of texture, form, color. So when you see the image, you can understand how the sequence or transition is happening in your plan, this one, and exactly what is happening on the on location. So natural transition, this is actually the natural transition. This transition, we give it when we, decide or when we create a design. This is the natural transition which has been happened. So when you have the sharp edges and all. These are the types of sequential changes within the planting units. This one is sequenced by form change. You can see the, height difference by and the form. This is while texture, and this is due to color. And this is the various type of entries, transition and entries. And the next is your contrast and harmony. When you see this, harmony is a quality of relatedness. When you see the contrast, we talk about the contrast colors, which will be contrast to one another. So likewise, when we do a landscape, we have the contrast. For example, we are having some flowering trees, and next to the flowering trees, we plan to keep some sculpture or a different contrast color flowering trees, or it can be a non-flowering trees. It depends upon the contrast and harmony. Contrast and harmony can go together, and neither can exist without the other. That is what it is. So when you see the images, you can understand. The first one is contrast in form and uniform texture. And this is the contrast in texture, uniform. And the next one is contrast in texture and color. You can see it. Both are, this one is totally different, this one is totally different. And your next topic is your visual characteristics of plants. What do you see and what are the different characteristics? So the first one is your line. So what do you mean a line is, line plays an important role in landscape, the design element which causes physical or visual movement. This is called as a line. When you have a kind of a boundary or something, that is called as a line. So in a garden, the form of a line creates a sense of a direction as well as the sense of a movement. The eye automatically follows the garden line, whether it can be an edge of a walkway, the curve of a flower bed, or the outline of the plant material. So this is what I'm trying to say, the edge of the walkway or the curve of the flower bed. So when you automatically walk into a garden, your eyes automatically go to that edge of the line. That is what it is. So line leads the viewer's eyes through the landscape space. It is defined and it delineates space. Exactly, it delineates space. That is the boundary or border or whatever. As a designer, we incorporate the line into landscape by using the contrast plant material and by forming patterns with similar plant materials. Pattern is line organized in a repetitive sequences. So for examples, when lines are created in a landscape, which includes the ground patterns, edges of contrasting, and plant materials, which, the tree tops meeting the sky. Intersecting lines suggest hesitation, change of view, direction. So this is what a line means. And the lines also include this curvilinear design and this one, your lines which are there in your landscape, which falls as a boundary or a delimited space. Okay, so in a curvilinear design, lines should be dramatic and should be done with the sense. Curvilinear lines have a weak, slopy edges, which can be visually interesting and pleasing to the eye. So than the horizontal and vertical lines, we always like this curvilinear, which actually feels good and pleasing to our eyes when we just follow them in our landscape design. On the other hand, linear lines such as those found in the straight hedges or the edges of paving materials suggest quick and direct movement. So when it is the lines are linear, you have a very quick and direct movement. But when it is curvilinear, it's kind of a puzzle kind. So angled lines can create an opportunities for creating the bones or the framework of the landscape. Lines that interconnect at right angles create an opportunity for reflection, stopping or sitting. So these are the images you can see. So these are the weak and scalpy edges which are left to be desired. It happens naturalistically. It's not created by us. So this is what it is. And next we come to read about the form. So what is a form? A form is like it defines a shape and a structure of an object. You know that. So in landscape design, the form indicates the shape of the plant and the structure of its branching. So tree forms are defined by branching pattern, while the shrubs are defined by the growth pattern. So branching pattern in the sense that how much you have the foliage, and the growth pattern is the what level or height do the plants grow. So form is the 2 or 3 dimensional shape and structure of an object space. The shape of the tree, the areas of the grass is being surrounded by edging, which are examples of form and is being expressed in landscape. Then what else? The form of the plant contributes to the total design of the composition. The basic form of each plant depends on the plant's natural growth habit. So each plant has its own kind of habit. For example, the place where it has been, the climate which has been suited for it, and its form. When it comes to its form, whether it's a round, conical, oval, or whether it's a creeper, or whether it's growing horizontally or weeping. So these are the different types of forms. You have upright, weeping, horizontal, conical, oval, and round. These are the different types of forms which we see. So for each thing, I have been given a description. For round, how it is going to be. All the this is round, dome, bell. This is oval, and this is columnar. So for round, it is the spatial plants where the foliage forms a ball or equal height and width. So when it comes to dome, it is round tops with width, and the foliage has been greater. And for a bell, the height is greater than the width and the foliage. And the foliage spreads onwards at the base. For the bell shape, it is like the height is greater. And when you see the base, it being spread over. And when it's come to the oval shape, the height is greater than the width, and the base of the shape turns into a formal one. Next is your columnar. When the height is at least 5 times the width, that is what is columnar trees. Is 5 times. So each tree has each kind of specification of its own according to its height, width, and the foliage cover difference from each shape or a form. And next comes your cone. And when it comes to cone, it has been kind of dome or bell-shaped plants. And fan, the shape is narrow at the base and spreads at the top. A pair of fan-shaped trees can be, it is an attractive one. Next is your spiky. It is dramatically good focal points in hotter climates. This has been basically used in hotter climates, not in our climatic conditions. Next is your irregular. It doesn't have a definite shape basically. It just goes in some kind of irregular shape. It can be of any kind. And it also makes a good focal point. These are the type of shrub forms. Till now we have seen the trees and these are the shrubs. So you have horizontal spreading, weeping, round, ledgy, upright vase, erect, mounded, arching, prostrate, trailing. It's a mat-like structure, conical, narrow pyramidal, and horizontal creeping. So these are the different types of shrub forms. So when you see this, we'll talk about the weeping trees, which can also used as a softer lines or interesting accents in the garden. They are also round or globular forms, which is being used for creating a large masses. So when you have the round or globular forms, we usually use it for buffer zones. When we have it in our when we have it in our site, when you have roads on that side, we use that as a buffer trees to extract the noise and less noise gets in. So most of the deciduous trees and shrubs have been a round form, and evergreen shrubs have more of the horizontal form. The concept or theme for the landscape detects which are form more appropriate within the concept of the theme. You have formal concepts and informal ones. Your formal concepts will be like your plant material will be on the ground beds. It will be like very straight, crisp, and precise planting beds, which is visually cleaned lined plains. You'll have a very clear picture of it. And informal or woodland concepts mandate much of the natural forms. Casual curving ground beds are loosely branched trees and vines which are satisfy this concept. And your next one is you use your vertical forms for strong accents and for adding heights. So as I said, your vertical forms can be added as a buffer zone. Horizontal or spreading forms add visual width to tall structures. You can see the images. We can incorporate weeping or dropping forms to create soft lines and need to provide a transition to the ground plane. So when every plant has its own distinct of habitat, a unique mass or volume which develops changes the plant matures. So some forms have been dramatic and others have been, attract our attention. These plants qualify change with the seasons and restructure the lines of the garden. The form of the plants selected and their placement are critical to create comfortable dynamic spaces and pleasing silhouettes. So in a line, you have the hardscape elements such as this pool, the pool outline, and this one. All of these are hardscapes of a line, which creates a pattern. Next comes your texture. Your texture is the surface quality of this object. I think you know what a texture is, what we touch and feel. Each plant differs when you touch and when you feel it. Some plants may be really plain, some plants have lots of texture, some has a different texture of design in it. So all of it. In texture, you have three groups. One is your coarse, medium, and fine. Your coarse is the plants which includes the structure and hardscape that are bold and large, which are huge. So the medium texture takes the plants in a smaller structures. The fine are the one which are very thin and delicate. So these are the three types which you have in your texture. So next is your, we have some points which you have to know about texture. Texture is the surface quality of any plant material or structure in a landscape. It is the feature of a plant or the structural physical surface qualities as determined by the form and the size. The texture is a very relative. It it has been associated with the sense of, touch and light. When you touch it, you can feel it, whether it is smooth, rough, or whether it is shining or dull, or whether the texture is tactile, all of it. So your texture can be seen in the different parts of a plant. For example, your leaves, stem, and branches. And some of the texture can be visual from the distance also. From the distance, we can actually see what kind of texture the plant is. And in addition, there's a physical feeling like rough and soft texture, which is also described. One perceives a visual difference. For example, the leaves of one plant are rough and the coarse when compared to the smaller leaves of the second plant. So it depends on the plant's growth also. So that's it. And next is you find the difference in your sand also. The way of the sand is being used. Some sands are different, and finer textures are easier for the viewer's eye span. Then they make the area seem to be larger and more expanded. Fine texture plant materials visually recede and appear farther away. So in this, when you see it, actually the rough and the coarse textures tend to create an informal mood and visually dominant, while fine smooth textures are being associated with formal and elegant, visually more passive. Fine texture plants are visually transisted as being farther away. So fine textures can be a tool for providing a sense of perspective in a small garden. So on each kind of texture gives us a different feel. That is what each point is describing here. It affects our, it changes our visual excitement or visual sense. Visually, some might be dominant. Visually, some might be pleasing. Some things when we plant or design to be an axial, all of it has been changed. So in distance viewers, the overall mass of the plant is being a dominating feature, and the fitness of the softness of the leaf is being branching pattern is being lost. So these are the different types of visual characters which we've seen. This is the foliage density. These are the twigs and buds which vary in your different sizes. This is smooth and thin. This is thick and cronky. These are the leaf sizes. This is your compound, and this is the simple. And these are the shapes which are opposite or alternative. And this been separated or entire. This is the light and shadow, the distance from which we view. Next comes your color. This color is being used to convey the emotion which influences the mood and character of the overall landscape design in the part of it. So the first part, when we read like, color and contrast. So when it is colorful, obviously our eyes, tend to see the view or whatever. So color actually is a major one, which is in our interest in landscape, which shows interest in our landscape. So it is kind of three properties. It is hue, value, and intensity. Hue refers to the relative purity or strength of a color. The value determines how light or dark is the color, and your intensity refers to how the color is bright or dull. These are the three components which are there in your color. This color adds the dimension of real life and interest to the landscape. So basically, when you give bright colors, it attracts your attention. So bright colors like red, yellow, and orange seems to be advanced during which seems to be very close to us as bright colors. The colors such as blue and green expresses restfulness and coolness. And the colors which has also been associated with ice, sky, and water. The cool colors have residing visual effect. And when you take dark colors and coarse textured plants in the foreground, it is being used for fine textured and light colored plants in the background. So we use a contrast of having your light and dark colors mixed up, so everything doesn't have the same feeling when we enter a landscape design part or a park or whatever it is. Warm colors such as red, orange, and yellow tend to give an advance towards the viewers, while blues, violet, green tend to reside into the landscape. Warm colors read well and affect the eyes, which are more quicker than to do with the cool colors. So warm colors are used for the sequence, which might be smooth and gradual. So yellow, red, and orange are the warm colors. These colors are associated with warmth because the colors are of sun, fire, and heat. Um, so when the colors are can infuse a high energy level into which whom they can have the objects. So objects of the plants which the colors stand out and they are being the first to be seen. So as a designer, we consider a few elements which has been the influence of the colors in the landscape design. So first point is like people have a psychology tendency to lean towards the light and the vivid colors. Bright colors and warm colors give more emotional response. These colors engage the viewers to move throughout the landscape. And your third point is the subdued lights and cooler colors are more conducive to moody reflections of thoughts. So as I said you already, like warm colors are red, yellow, and orange, which appear nearer or advanced. Cool colors are blue and green. And plants or plant masses must be blend with their surroundings. If a color change is desired in a plant mass, you have to proceed it in a sequence. So whatever it is, basically, we have different types of colors like cool, warm, bright. All the colors are used in some way where you have to, break those lines. Warm colors should be used here, bright should be used here, and what else? Different colors in each thing, different colors, and it has a different tints to it, which has a very fine texture. So in each place, different kinds of colors should be being used. So these are the plants and habitats which have been changed in your dynamic equilibrium. This is your bare rock. This is just the process of how you're operating in a specific place or time. These are the pioneer species, intermediate, and climax community. So these are your environmental benefits with these plants, what you're going to do. So the first point will be your microclimate, which provides shading and diverting the wind. I think you know what a microclimate is. A microclimate is the climatic change which happens in a small area. A microclimate changes by using your vegetation or providing any water bodies. So basically it provides a shade and diverting of the wind. It has been used as a shelter belt. It is used to prevent soil erosion. It is being used as a buffer zone. See, in the sketch, it is given as buffering plants of trees in the industrial areas. We have given it in the industrial areas because for the noise and for the pollution, which the trees take a control. So next is your plants as landscape design elements. So I'll tell you like what is a planting design. A planting design is the selection and placing of suitable plants within the overall design in the landscape. So first it is like we have to know like what type of plant and what type of plant materials can be used. So when it comes to the classification of plant material, we have different categories such as your size, habit of growth, form, your flowering characteristics, foliage characteristics, growth rate, and lifespan. I think you would have understood what all of this relates. Your first one is your the first one is your spatial functions of plant in a human landscape. You have different types. You have your ground level, below knee level, knee eye level, and above eye level. I'll explain you what is it. So the value natural sources are your oxygen, water, microclimate, and the available food chains. So for the first one is the size. So when it comes to the size, you can see the trees are classified into three, like large, medium, and small. Large trees are 15, medium is 10 to 15, and small is 5 to 10. And then you have your shrubs, large, medium, small. You have 3 to 5, and 1 to 3, and 1 meter. And then you have your ground cover lawn, which is 0.15. So these are the three types of classification of trees according to the sizes. And next comes to your plant habitat. You know, I have taught you like just before, you have vertical, horizontal, weeping trees, pendulous, and tortoise. These are the different types of trees. Next comes your flowering characteristics. You know, like flowering characteristics depends upon the season, color, density, and distribution of the flowers. Its botanical characteristics, like whether it's a single flower or it's a cluster, and presence or absence of foliage during flowering periods. So the texture, when it comes to texture, it visually it has your different leaf size, your twig and branch size, your bark articulations, your growth habitat, and your viewing distance. So when it comes to your growth rate and lifespan, when we talk about that, first thing is like fast growing species and slow growing species. So fast growing species have a shorter life, sparser foliage, and basically it is used as windbreakers, shelter belts, and nursery plants. When it comes to a slow growing species, it has a longer life compared to the last one. And it has lots of sustainable environmental benefits such as roadside planting, campuses, townships, and public landscapes. I mean, these are growing in all these, kind of environment. When it comes to your spatial function of plants, as I told you, this I have told you in the first point, the above eye level, waist, knee, below, and the ground level. I'll explain you in each thing. So the first one is the ground level planting. In the ground level planting, you see these are the ground level planting, which obstructs, it doesn't obstruct the vision or the movement which we happen to move. So it is primarily the spatial role as such it is on the floor. Okay, this is your ground level planting. Your next is your below knee height. So it is called as a low planting, which is below our knee level. So it allows the interrupted vision, but you can't, I mean, it distracts the movement. This is what is below knee level. You can see it in the sketches. Next is your knee to eye level planting. So this is your knee and this is your eye. So in between, what happens is your knee level planting. It is basically a medium shrub planting. This planting is between the knee level and the eye level, which obstruct the movement, but always, you'll have a vision. That is what this is called as. You can see the picture in both. Next is your medium shrub planting. It's the same, but it can emphasize the direction, that is circulation. The last picture is this. It's the same knee level planting, but you have a space for your circulation, which happens on both the sides. Next is your eye level planting. Your eye level planting is the tall shrub planting. Planting taller than your eye level from both your, which actually forms a physical and a visual barrier. So this is it. This is a tall shrub planting, which creates an eye level and a physical visual barrier. So that then you have the different types of planting groups. This is in a complex where you have the massing of trees to create the microclimate. These are the individual trees and the massing which is happening. It's the same, it shows the different heights and form, texture, which is happening in a build form. Next is the degree of enclosure by plants. The same, but how it has been derived. This one is your visually and physically enclosed. When you can see nothing, both the sides you have been covered. And this is partially visually enclosed. You can see what is happening on the other side. And this one is partially visually enclosed, which is also open. You can see totally what is happening. This is visually open but physically enclosed. Visually open and physically enclosed. And this one is physically open and visually also. The first one which we went through, like ground cover, it's like that. And next is the height and width ratio. When you come to height and width ratio, you can see this one is, you can see this part is low, and this one is the space which comes before. This is a height of a human, and see the scale of the landscape. These are the different height and width ratio, which shows how do we feel when we walk in between these. So these are the different tree formings. As I said, how you can create a buffer zone in between the activities, how we can screen and separate it with the larger buildings. I think all of you know about the urban heat island, how it is happening. It's just a graph which shows how where the urban heat island is more. You can reduce it by having the different structures, and which can solve the microclimate and the others. Um, these are the ecological qualities of trees. I'm just saying that what is what, branches and leaves. How well, what are the components and how it is being used. The leaves are the pollutants from our roots, which uh, provide, prevents soil erosion. Roots, leaves, and trunks, which provide habitat for birds, animals, and insects. So leaves, twigs, and branches absorb the sound and block the solar glare. And it also provides shade, and it reduces the wind speed. So for example, when you check the temperature in a concrete structure, you have the temperature like 25 to 35 percentage more. And in the same, next to the concrete structure, if you have the, grasses, which have the landscape, you can see it is 5 to, it is 5 to, yes, sir. Sorry, sir. Yes, sir. One second. One second. Net இருக்கு sir. 4458. இருக்கு சார். எப்போ கட் ஆச்சு சார்? இப்போதானா? ஓகே. So for example, when you take a concrete structure, your the amount of heat getting is being absorbed more. But when you take the grass, which gives a cooler exposed surface compared to the concrete, the amount of heat which is being taken by the grass will be less. Your temperature difference will be like nearly like 10 degrees Celsius. You will have the difference. The similar way, it changes from the colored surfaces to the grass surface. So to achieve the effective, tree shading, it has to be placed properly. So as the sun is at the low angles in the morning and the late, the tree should be placed facing southeast and the southwest of the building. The trees will cast long shadows which can be utilized effectively on both the sides. And otherwise, it will be very difficult to protect from the sun's heat. So the next is your. I'm just showing you the different plan views and its elevation. You have the ornamental plants, and you have the accent plants, and then you have the shade ones. So these are the different elevations of it. These are the different types of trees and its elevations. And these are the native plants of Tamil Nadu. This is the state flower of Tamil Nadu. This is Gloriosa subrama. And when it comes to flowers, the first thing is your fluorescent trees. The first, you have the fluorescent trees, which gives you lots of smell. For example, all of you know about the jackfruit. When you have a jackfruit, you can feel the smell. And you have the sound trees such as the bamboo and the banyan, and shaded trees such as the Mangifera indica mango trees, and the tamarind and the neem trees. These are all the botanical names. So I have given you lots of shrubs and the flowering trees and its botanical names. You can just go through it. These are the flowering shrubs. All of you know about this hibiscus, I guess. These are the ornamental plants which are being used, all the palm varieties. And then these are the ornamental shrubs. You can see it in your, when you go near the hotels or malls, you can find these trees. These are the foliage shrubs. So next is your compositional elements of landscape design. The first one is your water, landform, structure, vegetation, and climate. These are the five compositional elements. First, we have seen the visual elements, and now it's the compositional elements. So in this, when you see, the first one is the water. So when it comes to water, what are the benefits and what are the categories which are there? The first one is, we use it for irrigation and drainage, and we use it for transportation, for microclimate moderation. Microclimate moderation in the sense when you use it like fountains or something. And then is your habitat, recreational use, scenic value, site amenity, and the as a landscape feature. These are the things which water has been used. The next one, when it comes of what kind of water features, we have it as ponds, fountains, waterfalls, cascades. So when you come to pond, I know all of you know what a pond is. And the water feature can be of, the pond can be of any size or shape. And it can be a formal or a natural appearance. And fountains are the water feature which enhances our gardens with sounds and the moving water. Freestanding fountains and water fountains are both possible options, and they can be found in variety styles and design. Please see the images. So waterfalls are basically integrated into the design of natural ponds, but can be planned as a swimming pool too. And these are the cascade and the floating fountain. These floating fountains are there located in Saudi Arabia, which is the world's largest fountain, King Fahd's fountain. It is named after the King Fahd, and it is 312 meters, which is 1,023 feet. This is the floating fountain. Next, come to climate. So in this climate, what it has been, it is related to comfort with plants and with enchantment. So when it's designing with climate, we have two major considerations. One is the comfort, to make the outdoor space which is cool, and outdoor space cool when it is hot and warm, and when it is not, you should design accordingly, which you should relate with your sun, wind, and the other climatic reasons. So first is your design with climate for comfort. As I told you before, according to the climatic conditions, we should design our building. So ours is a hot and humid climate. So hot and humid or warm and humid. It's the both are the thing. So when it is like that, we usually prefer, designing our buildings in north and south orientation, which are facing the longer sides. That is the most important criteria which you have to look on it. As and When you see in cold climate, similar way, where you have the cold winds more, you have to place it in the opposite direction. You should place your east and west direction. So that is what. And then when it comes for enchantment, in our modern life, we would like to spend more our lives in climatically controlled buildings, which is actually detached from our natural world. So at times we need to enjoy with the wind and sun and the vegetation, whatever is happening around us with the natural elements. And when you design with plants, we always look into the first the part is look into the climatic conditions and what kind of plants are suitable to grow there. Next is your landform. When it's landform, it is your mounds, meadows, contours, and terraces. Please check the images. I think you all know what all of this means. And your vegetation, it shows your trees, shrubs, herbs, and grasses. So when it comes to your structures, a statue. A statue is a round representation of a person or animal or an event or whatever, which is at least close to a life size or larger. That is called as a statue. Statue and sculpture is both the same. Sculpture is a three-dimensional artwork which is created by shaping and using different kind of materials, which is built by wood, metal. It's like that. Uh, these are the furnitures which are used for your outdoor living, such as the pergola and the outdoor sitting. So the next topic is your grading. So I think all of you know what a grading is. Grading is a process of modification of the existing landform. You would have already studied about grading, such as your cut and fill process. That is what it is. So I'll let you know. So first, what are the importance of grading? The ground surface must be suitable for the intended purpose. So whatever purpose we are, which is required, it should be suitable. The visual result should be pleasing. The result of any grading must have a positive drainage. The grading plan should attempt to new levels which is being possibly originated from the state of the land. When the ground is reshaped, it should be done at a positively at a scale to its machinery. Topsoil must be conserved. The quantity of the cut should be appropriately to the equal one to the quantity of the fill. So when you cut something, when you do the cut and fill process, how much ever volume of sand or the earth which you're taking off, the same thing should be filled upon. So it comes in the next image. I'll show you that. So there are three principles in the development of grading plan. First, you should keep the unwanted water which is entering to the building. Then keep the surface runoff, creating damage to the property or the people during the periods of heavy rainfall. And the third one is to accommodate the structure on site, which is with minimum disturbing to the site. You should not disturb the whole earth. You have some rules for it. With that, you have to go. So when it comes to gradient, you actually have a formula to know that how much percentage of this slope you have been. I'll tell you how to find out this slope. So basically, you have a formula which is called as G is equal to D by L into 100. Your G is the gradient percentage, your D is the vertical rise, and your L is the horizontal distance. So you're going to find out the G. So this is your horizontal length, which is 35,357 divided by your, your D is 884, which is the distance, and the length is 35,357 into 100, whereas you get this G as your 25%. When you divide this in C, you will get the percentage of slope which you're going to achieve it. So this is it. This is how you find your percentage of slope. And then comes your spot elevation. Your spot elevation means it is basically used to establish the limit of slopes, to locate the contour lines, and to provide the control points in your contour lining. So, so the locations are top and bottom of the steps, tops of retaining wall, outside entrances, inside flooring levels, and corners of the all structures. So when you see this perimeter edge level, you please check the figures. This perimeter edge level is drained from the ridge level to all the edges. So this is the ridge level. The center is the ridge level, which drains to all sides and all the surfaces. The second one is the perimeter edge level. The drain point is from the center. So these are the contour levels which I'm explaining, and the drains which are happening. So in this you have the contour, the edge in the center, and from there it drains in all the points. And the next one is the perimeter edge level, which is in the center, which it slopes this way. All this were sloping downwards this side, these are sloping inwards. And this one is the perimeter edge level. All the slopes drain in the inlet at the same gradient. You have to, can you see the slope which is up and down? So you have 2 points here, which from here and here it goes up. This is a 2 perimeter edge level, which is slope from the ridge. You have the ridge in between and the slope towards on both the sides. And for this one, 2 perimeter edge level, minimum slopes to the trench drain. Center you have the trench drain, so from both the sides you have the drain. So next is your schematic grading for open areas. It's the same, how you do your site analysis and what is the concept you're going to use it. How we do it in a design, this will determine how the where the highest point is, where the lowest point is, and where the natural drain flows. How do we do our site analysis? It's the same. So it's just an example to show where the drain is, where you have the slope, where you have the existing road, where you have the open and the wooden ridges. How we do our site plan in our design, it's the same. So this is the cut and fill process, which you know. So when you cut something from here, when you cut the earth, and you're again going to fill it up here and use it. So usually we do that during a cut and fill process. You should not disturb the earth also too much. There's some extent till where you can do this process. So these are the standards for grading and which is there around the building. This you can see the swale. A swale is something where it's naturally created, or it can be created by us, where all the waters comes in, during the rain or something, all the water comes in, stands here, and you have the swale all over, which carries the water flow. Please just check the diagram. This one is your surface drain, which can be achieved by the pitching surface to the natural drain features and its system. These are the natural drain system. These are the drainage swale, which I told in the last diagram. This is the existing one. This is the proposed. And these are the one which created, the berms can be created for the noise and wind barriers or the addition of soil depth. You can just see how much the cut and fill is happening, the existing one, and how it is shallow. And these are the relative flat gradients which are needed for the sport fields, outdoor terraces, and sometimes near the buildings. So these images are in each level how the swale or the existing or proposed grade is given and for what purpose. I think if you look at the sketch itself, you can understand. These are the these can be created for some attractive landforms. When you see at times you have people staying here with a huge landform. And this is this makes to emphasize the size topography or make it flat. This grading has been done for the good view. This is to fit structures to the site. This is to control the circulation. That's it. So till this, we have completed third unit, and a little part is there relating to the construction details, which I'll be taking in your next class. And if you have any doubt, please let me know. Thank you.